stars. shining bright above you. Night breezes seem to whisper, I love you. Birds singing in a sycamore tree, dream a little dream of me. Say nighty night and kiss me. Just hold me tight and tell me you'll miss me while I'm alone and blue as can be. Dream a little dream of me. Stars fading, but I linger on, dear, still craving your kiss. I'm longing to linger till dawn, dear, just saying this. Sweet dreams till sunbeams find you, sweet dreams that leave all worries behind you. But in your dreams, whatever they be, dream a little dream of me.
Yeah, Bob, you ain't just dreaming. You is awake.
Stars fading, but I linger on, dear.
Please be seated. So good afternoon and welcome to a service of thanksgiving and remembrance for the life of William David Odell. My name is Ruth Lummox, and it is my privilege to be here in ministry with and on behalf of the Peoples of First United, serving in the city and the county of Wetaskiwin. We are grateful to have Jackie Nichols at the music. There will be a number of family and friends engaged in the service today, and we are grateful for their involvement. And thanks to Deb, who is newer to our booth, but learning fast. So we'll see how that goes. And welcome to those of you who may be joining us via the live stream on either Facebook or YouTube, or who may choose to watch the service later on at some time at your own convenience. Just a few announcements as we begin this afternoon. A reminder, we are live streaming. Also, if you are a cell phone carrier, I'm going to ask you to put your phone either on airplane or silent mode for the remainder of this afternoon's service, out of courtesy to the family. We will be proceeding immediately to the cemetery for interment following today's service. And so you're welcome to join the family there. It's just a few blocks this way. Basically, you come to the end of the road and turn into the cemetery. So look for the cars, that'll be fine. If you choose not to go to the cemetery, you are welcome to proceed downstairs for the luncheon and to start that luncheon, and the family will join you as soon as they return. There are washrooms directly outside the back of the sanctuary here, and more washrooms downstairs in that immediate beneath those ones. You can either go down our main stairwell there. There is an elevator if mobility is a concern. There's a fire exit out this side here as well, where you saw the family enter in, so there is another stairwell downstairs there. The building is basically a square. You just keep walking, you'll get back to where you started from. So pretty hard to get lost here. Mostly we want you to be comfortable and to be welcome in this space. We live amongst and to the north of the peoples of the Nahiawan, the Sundance culture. And as recent newcomers to Turtle Island, we carry a responsibility to learn from those who have lived here for centuries countless before us, to seek to be peoples of reconciliation, to create a better community and a better future for the generations still to come. We gather this day, though, as family, friends, community. And so I invite you to take a deep breath, to make space for the Spirit. Psalm 100 says, "Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth, and worship your God with gladness. Enter God's gates with thanksgiving." And so we gather today to give thanks for that holy gift of David's life. Remembering his enthusiasm for storytelling, we pause to remember our place in God's story. Woven through the memories and the stories you will hear today and in the days and weeks ahead is sorrow, as each of us grieves David's death in our own way. There are changes that death brings about for you, his family, his friends, and so we invite God's strength and presence with us today, trusting that the Creator will renew our strength, that we are not alone. Thanks be to God. Let us pray. Gentle, holy friends, sit with us a while amidst our tears and laughter. Wrap your love around the aches and pains we carry. Strengthen us to tell the stories that lead to healing. Touch our grief with hope. Fill the wells of our souls with your peace. Grace us with wisdom and compassion for the living of our days. Amen. I'm going to invite us for our congregational hymn this afternoon. We'll be singing the first two verses of How Great Thou Art, number 238 in our Voices United hymn book. The words are on screen, and you are invited to stand as you are comfortable for the singing of this hymn. And a cousin of the family, please be seated. I would invite Carrie to come and share some words of David's life.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carrie PC, and I am a Palfrey cousin to the Odells, and I'm honored to be your celebrant today. It is a beautiful thing to share memories of one we have loved, and it is bittersweet to say goodbye in the same breath. But today we will do both as we remember the life of David Odell, a complex man who believed in good, helping others, and when he had an idea in his head, he was tenacious. On behalf of the family, Dawn and Noreen, Elizabeth and Julian, Andrea and Steve, Aaron and Matt, Rob, Ian, Doug, and great nieces and nephews Anne, Spencer, Billy, Logan, Nora, and Wesley, thank you for being here today to show your love and support and to share the journey that was David's life. We come to remember him as he was long ago and as he was just a few weeks ago, to remember him in his times of strength and his times of need, to remember him in his moments of joy or pleasure and in his moments of sadness, to remember him as he was. In our remembering, we celebrate not only who he was, but also what his life has meant and will always mean to us. We come also to mourn in the silent, empty places he held, his companionship and conversation, his person, his kindness to people he viewed as less fortunate than himself, to whom he gave from his wallet gifts in the guise of a loan, to also mourn the loss of his physical presence, though we know he has been released from ill health. As we share his story today, some stories will bring a smile and some will bring a tear, and all emotions are welcome here. As Washington Irving said, there is a sacredness in tears. They are not the mark of weakness, but of power. They speak more eloquently than 10,000 tongues. They are the messengers of overwhelming grief and of unspeakable love. As David's younger cousin, I remember quite a bit about him. We lived in Victoria on Vancouver Island, and whenever we heard the Odells were coming to visit, my little brother and I would quiver with excitement and begin the countdown to their arrival. Are they here yet? Are they here yet? When are they going to get here? The Odells would stay at our grandparents' home a few blocks away. My little brother Kenny would hop on his bronze-colored Schwinn Mustang with a banana seat and pedal as fast as his lily white legs would take him. And I would follow on a nondescript blue girl's bike. We would zoom over to see them, excitement pounding in our hearts. When I remember David in his youth, I can always remember his green eyes and thick, dark eyelashes. I thought he was cute. Hanging out with the Odell cousins was always fun for me and Kenny. A province apart, we didn't spend loads of time together during the early years. But as a young adult, I moved to Wetaskiwin and lived in Alberta for more than a decade. During some of that time, David was in Wetaskiwin. I remember a boyfriend had badly broken my heart. I can conjure up the depth of my devastation just thinking about it. David and I would go for walks around Wetaskiwin. He would very patiently listen to me as many times as I would repeat the same sad story. David would receive it every time as if he'd never heard it, his face always reflecting genuine concern. When I asked his advice, he would offer up some common sense suggestions. It was offered with no expectation of me following it. The irony here is that I cannot remember the name of the man who had broken my heart, but I always remembered the cousin who listened and cared. Maya Angelou said it best when she said, "I've learned that people will forget what you've said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." My brother Kenny, who rode that Mustang, wrote a farewell note to David. "Goodbye, my old cousin and friend Dave. It takes me a little time to adjust to the idea of the world without you in it. I'm just thinking of what good times we had together, like the times we spent visiting every single thrift store and mom and pop diner between Edmonton and Red Deer, looking for that hard-to-find Bing Crosby book or record, and listening to Depression-era songs on the car tape deck, and eating cheeseburgers in the Queen's Diner or the cafe on the main street in Camrose. We found some really great old DVDs at the Red Deer Value Village one day, and you showed great restraint in not buying the whole shelf, but only just half. But there were some great finds that day. The last movie we watched together, Morocco, with Gary Cooper and Marlene Dietrich, was just a couple of months ago, with you laying in your bed, chug-a-lugging your chocolate milk, as we watched it on your video player. With your amazing encyclopedic knowledge, you knew the year it was made, as well as the director, the same way you knew all the dates and directors and arcane stuff from the golden era of Hollywood. I'm sure in some parallel universe, you have your own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. You were the king of trivia, and we made a killer team at Trivial Pursuit, as long as there weren't too many sports questions. My mom, your Auntie Jo, gave you her Maurice Chevalier records because Carrie and I used to tease her endlessly for listening to him. She knew they would find a more appreciative audience with you. She said she and your Uncle Bill both loved you very much, and I remember they always would make a great fuss about you. I remember you were a very friendly person as well. Walking down the street, you would greet every single person you passed and ask them how they were, or say what a nice day it was, even if it was pouring rain. You were sincere, unique, and stubbornly you. You were also kind-hearted, honest, and trusting, which made you vulnerable sometimes. But these are all virtues. I wish that life were longer so that we could have shared more time and watched a few more black and white movies together. Geeks like you are hard to find. What's the password? Swordfish, as always. Goodbye, old buddy. Our family is multi-talented with gifts of writing, music, painting, and photography. Erin Odell, David's niece, has created a beautiful musical tribute to David. I invite her to come forward and share it with us.
Is this mic on yet? Perfect. So I'm glad I went first because this is harder to do with a tight throat. So the last time that I saw David, I brought this and we sang a little bit. And these two were requests, so they're now together. And his farewell from Judy and Jimmy. You'll know. Give me a sec. When all the world is a hopeless jumble and the raindrops tumble all around, heaven opens a magic lane. When all the clouds darken up the skyway, there's a rainbow highway to be found, leading from your window pane to a place behind the sun, just a step beyond the rain. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. You must remember this, a kiss is still a kiss, A sigh is just a sigh. If birds fly over the rainbow, why then, oh, why can't I? Moonlight and love songs never out of date, hearts full of passion, jealousy and hate. Woman needs man, and man must have his mate, that no one can deny. It's still the same old story, a fight for love and glory, a case of do or die. The world will always welcome lovers as time goes by. If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why can't I?
Thank you for that beautiful piece. Beautiful, Erin. One of David's favorite poems will now be read by Noreen Odell.
If, by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave up your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of the pitch and toss, and lose and start again from your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will to, which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and, which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
Thanks, Noreen. And now the people who knew David the best, his siblings, will now share his life with us. I invite David's sister Liz to come forward and share some thoughts about her brother.
As they say in New Zealand, kia ora, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. That means hello, and welcome to you and all of you. It's lovely to see you. We'll be seeing some photos later in the program that show David's life, and a lot of them are of family groups. In the ones showing David, Dawn, and me, David is the oldest, so he's the tallest, at least to start with. He wore glasses earlier than the rest of us, from about the age of 7. It's pretty obvious in the photos that I'm the youngest, and Dawn is in the middle. David was 6 years old when I was born. When I was not quite 2.5, our family moved to a new house across town in Spatnow Drive. My room was at the top of the stairs. It's still there. And David and Dawn shared a bigger room down the hall. I was still sleeping in a crib. I was small for my age. I can remember holding the rails and seeing Mum come up the stairs to get me. But once my new big kid bed arrived, I could hop out of it at night. I was in a room by myself, and all the action seemed to be elsewhere. So after being put to bed, I'd sneak down the hall and jump into David's bed, where there was someone to talk to. David would call out, "Mom, Pib's out of bed." As soon as he said Mom, I raced back to my room, calling out, "No, I'm not! No, I'm not!" as I ran down the hall. At least once he fooled me by calling out, "Mom," and in the pause, which was followed by the sound of me running, he said, "Can I have a drink of water?" By the time I was about 6, David would babysit me in the daytime if Mum had to go out. He was not my first babysitter, but I was the guinea pig of his babysitting career. We spent a lot of time watching TV. This was in the mid-60s, so we had the full diet of Gilligan's Island, Bewitched, Green Acres, Thunderbirds, Bonanza, I Dream of Jeannie, the Beverly Hillbillies, and on and on and on. David and I would set up camp on the couch in the den in front of the black and white TV with our dog, Sheba, and work our way through a loaf of sliced bread. Dawn was sometimes there too, but he also had other interests that drew him away from the TV. As we got a bit older, David looked after me in the evenings too, when Mum and Dad went out together. This was still a long time ago. There was no Netflix, no satellite TV, no DVDs, no videos, no cable, and there were only 2 TV channels. In my memory, there was a movie, maybe one on each channel, that started about 7 o'clock in the evening, and another about 9 o'clock, and the late one that started at 11:30 and finished when the TV station went off the air for the night. If you wanted to watch a movie, you watched whatever was on. That's probably how David discovered Bing Crosby, but I don't know for sure. In those days, most movies on TV were pretty tame, not like today. One day David got into trouble. We'd watched something the night before, and I can't remember what it was. Mama asked about it at breakfast the next day, and we gave her a brief summary of the plot. I mentioned that one of the main characters was a prostitute. I didn't know what that meant, but I like to learn new words. Mum had a quiet word to David. She said, some movies were suitable for kids, meaning me, and some were not. And he needed to be more careful in his choices in future when there was a kid watching with him. Very wise. By the time videos and DVDs came along, we'd all grown up, and there was a new generation of kids watching movies with David. Those formats made it easy for him to see his favorites over and over again, and to share suitable content with his nieces and then his nephews once they were old enough to sit still and be quiet. My 3 sons, that is Rob, Ian, and Doug, are you watching? Not the TV show, visited Canada regularly as children, but saw only a small fraction of David's collection of suitable for children movies. David was a bit disappointed in their lack of movie knowledge and clearly thought I'd let the side down. He tried to remedy that by sending us vintage videos and DVDs every year for Christmas, even after we had no longer had any way of playing them. David was generous and liked to share his enthusiasm. A conversation might begin like this. Did you know that Bing Crosby once gave a new winter coat to a homeless guy who was sitting outside his house? Of course, your answer would be no. So the story continues. He did. One winter, during the Depression, about 1935, he came out the back door of his house to take out the garbage. And there was a homeless guy sitting in the alley. The guy asked him for money because he was hungry and he didn't have any money to buy food. So Bing was always on a first-name basis in our house. Bing went inside and came out with his own brand new winter coat and gave it to the guy just like that. He gave him some money too. He gave him $20. That was a lot of money in those days. David would continue. I'd never heard that story, you know, but I read about it just the other day. I thought that was a really nice thing for him to do, don't you? He could have just told the guy to get lost, but he didn't. I never knew that about him, but it gave me a lot of respect for him. I always thought he was a good guy, but this really impressed me. Okay, so here's my full disclosure. I have made up this example. And as far as I know, there was no homeless guy in Bing Crosby's back alley. He may not even have had a back alley. I don't know where he lived during the Depression. David would have known. He told a lot of stories like this. And my example shows the standard format for one of David's stories. First, he asked a question to engage the listener. Did you know this thing about this famous person? He never assumed that he knew more than anyone else about Bing, but usually he did. He wasn't trying to show off his knowledge, but to share his insights. Second, he described something the famous person said or did, or their preferences, maybe the brand of cigars they liked best. But he described it with lots of details. His memory for detail could be exceptional. Thirdly, he confessed that the information was new to him. He'd learned something new and he wanted to share it. He liked to learn new things about his interests. Don't we all? And finally, he described how he felt about the famous person's actions. Often his admiration was confirmed, but sometimes he was disillusioned by new information, and that could trouble him. He liked to know that people shared his values, and he didn't like to have to change his mind about people he thought were good guys. There are some morals to this story. I'll leave you to ponder. It's been a while since I've seen some of you. I've lived in New Zealand for 39 years now with my husband, Julian, who's at home today, keeping warm by the fire with his sore knee. Couldn't face 13 hours on a plane. I've been there since 1983, and in that time I've only seen David when I came here to visit. The last time was in 2018. When David's bowel surgery was scheduled for April 2020, I told Dawn I wouldn't be able to come. At that stage, New Zealand was in lockdown, along with much of the rest of our world, and no one was going anywhere. Then, to keep COVID out of New Zealand, the government decided that anyone arriving back into the country had to spend 2 weeks in managed hotel isolation. And there were lots of Kiwis still trying to get home for births, marriages, and funerals. And there were limited spaces in hotel isolation. So if I'd flown to Canada last year, it might have taken me 6 months or a year before I could have gone back to New Zealand. That would have complicated life. Earlier this year, once Omicron was circulating widely in New Zealand, hotel isolation was phased out, and there was huge built-up demand for outward flights. In June, when I checked, the earliest available flight was 6 weeks away, so about next week. But fortunately, soon after that, Air New Zealand brought back direct flights to Vancouver, so here I am. Although I didn't arrive until after David had made his departure, I'm grateful that he hung on long enough for me to be able to be here with you all to see him off. Thank you all so much for coming too.
David's brother, Don, will now come up and share his stories.
Thank you, Carrie. So, David would be impressed to see you here. Can you imagine anything he would like better than to have a celebration with a bunch of his friends listening to his music? And that would be a treat. And if he were here, he would thank you all for coming, and he would thank his family for looking after him. Erin reflected on the song she did. She did a couple of visits and played songs like that while he was in bed and unable to get out and do things. Andrea brought I think, just Logan, because there were COVID restrictions. And David always asked about Andrea and Erin and the kids and how are they doing. So he was quite interested in what you're up to. So you may not have seen him that much lately, but he knew all about you. He would thank Noreen for including him in everything that we did when we could. So David was the first child in our family. His first name was William, after his father and his grandfather. And his second name was David, after a Welsh saint. I'm going to read a few comments from my grandfather, who was a Welshman named Tommy Palfrey, which would throw some doubt onto the saint part. So, as a child, he had many adventures, had a pretty normal childhood. My friends in the back row, Rick and Murray, will remember him playing out at Pigeon Lake and sharing comic books with Marilyn and Barb and others. So he went to Cubs with Jackie's husband, Howard, and Howard's older brother, Garth, just down the road here. So he had a pretty normal childhood. He was a great Trivial Pursuit partner. As Billy and Logan and Spencer can confirm, brothers have complex relationships. They're your closest pals because they're around from the moment you were born, and your first competitors. And also your biggest rivals, right, guys? Because they're always there. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes they get in the way. So you play with them more, you fight with them more than anybody else, because they're always there, and we did. They get in your way, competing for stuff. There's a rivalry from brothers at an early age. Sometimes they wouldn't play fair. So, a long time ago, at the Christmas party in this church, when I was about 3 years old, a man named Mr. McNaughton intercepted me after I'd been to see Santa. Coming back, I had my gift in my hand, and Mr. McNaughton said, "Where are you going? You've already got your present." And I said, "I have to tell Santa my brother's a bad boy." Sometimes we didn't play fair. So, if you have an older brother, your life's easier, right, Graham? Graham has lost his older brother in the last year as well, and he can tell you that when you go to school, you're not a stranger in the school because you know the teachers, and you know what's going on. You know the rules. David wasn't very good in math, arithmetic early on, so before I went to elementary school, my mother would try and help him with his arithmetic, flashcards, see how fast he could get the answer. So by the time I got to school, Math didn't scare me a bit. Like my dad had coached him and I listened, and he'd done the flashcards with my mother and I listened. So if you're the younger brother, you can sometimes get ahead of the game. So it took me a while to figure that out. So I have lots of things to thank him for. I'm sure his comic book collection helped my reading. It's not vintage literature, but, you know, as I said, I think you read it in the program, I knew who superheroes were when I was just looking at the pictures. I recall a competitive incident when I was, I don't know, 8 or 9 or 10. He'd obviously been engaged in old movies already. And he kind of looked at me and he had his fedora on. Didn't look like that, or I'd put it on. And he'd kind of tilt it over to one side and give me his James Cagney gangster impression. And he'd say, "I'm smarter than ya." And I would reply with my Edward G. Robinson impression and say, "Yeah, we'll see about that." So, yeah, you're allowed to laugh. I share perceptions of him over the years. And, you know, what I found interesting in all the messages that I got is they were pretty consistent, whether you knew him 50 years ago or 2 months ago. So I'll start at the beginning. His latest landlady, a lady named Karen Casimir in Willow Cottage, said David had a deep impact on our lives. He was always singing, talking, telling stories, helping the elderly ladies, including playing Chinese checkers with a lady who was 108. I asked him, I said, "Do you beat that woman?" And he said, "No, she practices quite a bit." So, she said, "We'll miss the sunshine he brought to Willow Cottage." My old friend Yvonne, who I'm happy to see here from the Canadian Western Bank, Yvonne said he was a kind-hearted person who had a unique way of connecting with the underprivileged. You know, like Nicole from Seasons, which is the assisted living place in the south side of Wetaskiwin, said he was always so very kind. So that's kind of the impressions of him from the last little while. So on the older category, my cousin John, who I haven't heard from in decades, emailed me this week and called him a ray of sunshine. Cousin Tom Palfrey, I recall his knowledge and enthusiasm. It all seems so long ago, because it was. Old friend Carl Bunnan reflected on his inner strength. Old friend Mike Sawicki said David was such a kind and friendly person. David pitched to my brother Andy and me the idea of writing a comic strip. I was impressed with his creativity and passion. Another friend from Pigeon Lake, Delbert Lewis, said, "I will always remember him with an innate kindness in David whenever I met him." A couple of girls that David knew in high school. Pam said, "I remember David as a happy and friendly fellow." Georgia said, sorry, I got that backwards. Pam said, David was brave and caring. May we all spread a little sunshine around in his life, a lesson that we can learn from David. My cousin, Ann Braden, said, "I will remember David as a kind and generous person who made the best of a difficult past, and one of the legendary foursome." Now here's where the contrast sneaks in, the contrary view of David and me. I remember you and him as part of the legendary foursome. You, Rick, and Tom, my Braden cousins, such cute devils you were. So these are the nice comments I have received. Thank you all. Happy, generous, caring, friendly seems to be the consistent message, whether from those who knew David a long time ago or in his last years. Anne indicated perhaps David and I were not always the calm, mature individuals you've come to know as grown-ups. Our mother was the first archivist in Wetaskiwin. Her family wrote many letters, which along with my grandfather, Tommy Palfrey's diaries, still exist in the family archives. So I was doing a little research this week. My grandfather, Tommy Palfrey's diaries, paint a different picture. February 16th, 1961. David was playing in the basement with Dawn when he suddenly wanted a drink of water. His mother couldn't hear him yelling up the stairs, so David phoned his father at work at the drugstore, asking him to phone home and get Mom to bring him a glass of water. So my grandfather said, "Some stunt for a kid." So the diary entry for May the 18th, Bid and Bill, my parents, went out and left the kids with us. The boys are showing considerable improvement these days. That was as good as it got. June 2nd, Bid and Bill went to a wedding and left the kids with us. We had tea and crumpets on the front lawn, and the brats yelling and whining. Finally, Bid and Bill came and took them away. So he must have had a bad week that week. Because on Friday, June the 9th, at night, Bid came and left Eliza here, Liz. Well, she and Bid took the boys to the circus. I hope the monkeys kidnapped the little sods. They would be right at home in the monkey tent. Saturday morning, June the 10th, 1961, Bid came over about 9 o'clock to collect Eliza, who's been good, but the boys soon brought down the average. My grandfather really liked my sister, you can tell that. On Wednesday, November 8th, he said, "With Eliza in the car, never a whimper out of her except for chortles and smiles. I'm beginning to wonder if she has all her marbles." Tuesday, November 21st, 1961. Eliza arrived early for the day while Bid went shopping. I never saw a better and more contented and sweet-natured kid. The Odell boys are having dinner with their father downtown. Wild excitement, I bet. So you can see my grandfather thought David and I needed a bit of work. In fairness, he was pretty old by then. He was born in 1885, and he'd fought in the war and been in the trenches and fought in a tank in World War I. So by the time I met him, he was a little old man. He was arthritic and diabetic and, in the last few years of his life. And had already had 11 grandchildren by the time we showed up. Now, some years have passed, and I'm on the other side of the equation. Right, guys? On the other side of the equation, 4 of my 6 grandchildren are in the room. Well, my grandfather was older and much more difficult than I. More difficult for him to play. He was much older, more difficult for him to play than me. Sometimes after a long visit with my little guys, when I'm babysitting, I wonder if Tommy Palfrey has engineered payback. So, to balance my grandfather's constructive criticism, I also read a letter to my mother from Carrie's mother, our Auntie Jo, who said that David was her favorite, and that I was lovely and particularly good with her ruffians, which would be Carrie and Kenny. So that was some years later. Ken Palfrey and David had a very special relationship, discussing history, old movies. You've heard from Ken already. Ken's trip from the West Coast to spend time with David this May as he neared the end was very special. David always asked about Aaron, Andrea, Spencer, and Billy. And I have a great photo from David's birthday in 2020 where he's eating birthday cake on the deck out at the lake and the kids, with the kids. And Spencer had a puzzled look on his face, sitting next to David. I'm quite sure, I think he was wondering how his great uncle knew so much about superheroes from the Marvel Universe. Is that right, Spencer? So we shared many adventures, happy ones early on, many challenging ones as we maneuvered through his healthcare journey. David has always been an eccentric personality, as you may guess. So when his first symptoms of schizophrenia appeared in his early 20s, it was hard to extinguish his flamboyant personality from the ailment. I had a sense of his challenge. I learned the challenges of getting a diagnosis to begin with, as well as the public's fear and misunderstanding of mental illness. How'd you like to have an ailment that caused you to scare people, see things that other people didn't see? And my brother, at one point in his life, took personal responsibility for catastrophic world events. So it's, there was a lot of education I got from David, learned things. My father held a meeting with me in 1992 when he was getting his affairs in order, and he said he was planning for David's future. He asked me if I could do the job as his trustee, cautioned that the job could go on for a long time. I didn't really have any sense of what the job was, and I was hoping it would go on for a lot longer than this. Anyway, I didn't think he had any choice. I thought I was the very best candidate in the field of one. So anyway, 2001, my dad died, and David became my responsibility. So he had this disease, which was unfair for him. When medication was not effective, he had hallucinations. He'd been living independently and doing okay. In the period of 2002 to 2006, he was not doing well. I recall visiting his psychiatrist with him in that period, and there was a sign on the wall, if you're going through hell, keep going. And he did. So if you look at the back of your folder, you'll see the great song, Walk On. That's why it's there. The characteristics described by his friends from long ago and those who met him in the last few years, happy, generous, caring, friendly, helped keep him going. He settled down in a new drug regimen that worked for the rest of his life. He moved into an assisted living facility in Wetaskiwin, made friends, thrived there with regular meals and consistent delivery of meds. I convinced him to move there by telling him he would be looking after our mother, who was already in the building. Mom was 84 in the early stages of dementia. They both thought they were looking after each other, and I guess they were. They enjoyed excursions organized by David. He would organize a cab ride to the KFC store, and then to our house in Spatnow, which was empty, and they would eat fried chicken and watch old movies and return to the assisted living complex before lights out. They had a great relationship. I did that. They were missing one day. During the week, I appeared at Sunrise Village and couldn't find either of them. I went, I kind of know where they are. And I went over to the house, and they were chomping on chicken and watching old movies. So my mother, dementia had caused her to forget the rule about not eating in the living room because she was up to her elbows in a whole bunch of herbs and spices. So after 2 years ago, he faced major surgery, and he bravely told me in a line right out of a classic movie, "Tell Aaron and Andrea if I don't pull through, they can have my videos." I found him a high care place in Edmonton, Willow Cottage, where he recovered better than expected. He had a great birthday in 2020, riding out to the lake with the top down and eating pizza and birthday cake on the deck with Andrea, Aaron, Ann Spencer, Logan, Billy, Wesley, and Nora, and Logan. In July of 2021, he had been better for about a year. And, I was beginning to wonder if the doctors were wrong. But I took him for a drive on White Avenue with the top down, and he made me park illegally in front of the Wee Book Inn. He said, "I want to go in there." I pulled over and got his walker out of the back, and he ran off down the street. And he was harassing the guy at the counter about Bing Crosby and what he had and what he could sell him. And he bought some old movies, not the ones he wanted. But anyway, he provided, you have to find some entertaining moments in the face of bleak illness. And he did provide a couple of stories. Last year in August, when Graham and Dave and I were playing golf in Kimberley, we got the call from the ER doc, phoned me from from the Grey Nuns Hospital saying, you know, we might not make it through the night, you better come. So we canceled our golf game. I told him that he owes Graham and Dave a golf game, and I think Graham might have got his back last week, but still outstanding. Anyway, we drove all the way back in a big hurry, and I arrived at the Grey Nuns Hospital about 7 at night, and I walked into the ward where he was, and I heard him. He was singing. And I went, that's good. Glad he was singing first, because when I went to where he was, he had the bed sheets pulled up over his head. And if I'd seen him before I heard him, I would have thought he was dead. And anyway, he rebounded from that with a few ups and downs in the middle. But another interesting moment was I went to see him at the Grey Nuns, and he said, Dad wants to talk to you. And Dad had been dead for 20 years. And I went, well, I'd love to talk to him too. Like, can you arrange this? And afterwards I thought, am I in trouble for something? Like, what have I been doing that Dad wants to talk to me about? Anyway, characteristics throughout his journey, in addition to happy, generous, caring, friendly, as Other has referenced, I saw determined or stubborn, as his mother used to say, and a week or two ago, this EMT who was attending to him said, he's a tough man. So, as my friend Dr. Anderson said, he was not dealt a great hand, but he played them well. And I think his grandfather, Tommy Palfrey, would be impressed, notwithstanding his earlier reviews. And life is easier if you have a big brother. And, you know, if I have a wish for him for the next go-around, that he can have life like the rest of us, unencumbered by mental illness, and just have a little more fun. Anyway, thank you for attending.
Thank you for sharing that, Don. Okay, so David's niece, Andrea, has written a letter to David, which she'll now share with us.
Thanks. I was going to get there. It's been a long time since I've spoken from a pulpit at a funeral. I think the last time was probably when I buried my son. So, speaking of, in 2011, we lost a child, and one of the ways that I was able to deal with my grief was through writing letters. So, when I found out that David had passed away, I had a lot of thoughts, and I was a bit stunned. I couldn't even think about anything. So I sat down at my computer, and I wrote him a letter, because that's all I could do. So I'm going to read it to you. Dear David, this is my last goodbye. I feel like we have been saying goodbye for a long time. It started when I was a child, and we would leave Maxie and Grandpa's Pigeon Lake cabin. You would race to the van as we were pulling out and put your hand on the window. I would also put my hand on the window with equal gusto. Sometimes, when I was on my way, you would shake my hand, but it was so fast that it made my arm jiggle, and I would laugh. You liked to make me laugh. I would get right up close to your face, and I would look, or pardon me, you would look side to side like this. Okay? I'm not sure why that was so funny, but I enjoyed it. You called me Andrea instead of Andrea. Maybe it sounded more exotic. You told me I had a classic profile. You were my Uncle Davy. You told me that all that glitters isn't gold, and taught me the golden rule. You enjoyed watching movies with us, and your movies were from an era before I was even thought of. My favorite was Kid Millions from 1934. We nicknamed the Ice Cream Kid, as everyone was given ice cream at the end. That's Entertainment, Singing in the Rain, The Wizard of Oz were some others that I vividly remember. And our Christmases were never complete without Bing. Mine still aren't. I remember becoming a teenager and realizing that you were different than other adults. You liked to stay up really late and woke up in the afternoon. You loved to talk about the things that you were interested in, and sometimes would ask me the same question more than once. Perhaps you didn't hear me the first time. My parents told me that you had an illness called schizophrenia. I was really sad for you. I learned about it. I remember helping clean out your apartment that you lived in Edmonton. There were almost finished Irish Spring soaps stacked in a cupboard. I remember you going in and out of hospitals when you needed medication adjustments. Our relationship changed. I had said goodbye to my childhood playmate. It took me time to figure out how to relate to you as a teenager, but as I matured, I realized that what mattered was how much you cared for me. You would share your comic book collection with me and ask me what I was reading. You told me that the Babysitters Club books had very dry titles. You were right. You were a constant in my life. You took care of Maxie after she couldn't live at home anymore. And I guess she took care of you too. When I told you I was getting married, you were concerned for me as I was so young, 19. You told me that I didn't have to have babies if I didn't want to. Perhaps at the time I wasn't interested in hearing those things, but I know they were said with love. At Maxie's funeral, you said she was a good cook. And when asked if there was anything that you'd like to have of hers, you asked for a painting that she did using you and my dad as models, as long as nobody else wanted it. In 2020, you were diagnosed with cancer, and you outlived everyone's expectations. You were a cat with 9 lives. My most favorite time spent with you was when I visited you at the Grey Nuns Hospital, and it was August 1st of 2021. Since it was COVID times, only one visitor was allowed at a time. My dad and I took turns. I don't remember how long I was with you, but you sang me songs. I didn't know you could sing. You told me that you wished you had gone on to Hollywood and chased that dream. I wish I had recorded you singing now, as those songs only exist in my memory. I FaceTimed Liz and Julian and listened as you sang for them. You told us that you loved us. I don't know if you knew that things were going to get worse. I visited you in your care home in Edmonton with my dad and sister. I didn't get to hear you sing again. I remember you telling me that you thought COVID was your fault, and I told you that was not true. You struggled. It was a long, slow decline, not the end that we would have wished for you. I think you had a strong heart. I know you had a strong heart. I'm not sure what heaven looks like these days, but I would expect that you are free of your earthly ailments. Davy, I hope you get the girl. I hope you sing in the rain, and I hope you follow that yellow brick road into the sunset with all you love. See you later, alligator. Love, Andrea.
And thank you so much for sharing that with us, right from your heart. We will now watch A Life in Pictures, lovingly created by David's niece, Erin.
Some weeks ago, Miss Peggy Lee wrote a song and introduced it on the Philco show. It became quite a big hit. Everybody's singing it. I don't know why I shouldn't give it a riffle. Here I go. Made it. Yes, it's a good day for singing a song, and it's a good day for moving along. Yes, it's a good day. How can anything be wrong? A good day from morning till night. And it's a good day for shining your shoes. Yes, it's a good day for losing the blues. Everything to gain and nothing to lose. A good day from morning till night. I said to the sun, good morning, sun. Rise and shine today. You gotta get going if you're gonna make a showing. And you got to ride away, 'cause it's a good day for paying your bills. And it's a good day for curing your ills. So take a deep breath and throw away the pills, 'cause it's a good day from morning till night. I said to the sun, good morning, sun. Rise and shine today. You know you gotta get going if you're gonna make a showing. And you got to ride away, 'cause it's a good day for curing your ills. And it's a good day for paying your bills. So take a deep breath and throw away the pills, 'cause it's a good day from morning till night. Yes, it's a good day from morning till night. A good day from morning till night. A good day from morning till night. Ah, when old Mr. Grouch sat on his gloomy couch, told us that the end of the world was near.
My happy heart rose with a start, hollering, let's get out of here.
We gotta stay with the happy people. Have your fun, live in the land of joy.
Stay with the happy people. Face the sun, life is a Christmas toy.
Down through the countless ages, tears have been contagious. And take it from me that misery is just a looking around for company.
So stay, stay, stay with the happy people. We gotta stay happy. Don't wrinkle your brow, it's strictly out of style.
Just stay with the people who love to wear a smile.
We gotta stay, stay with the happy people. Have your fun, live in the land of joy. We gotta stay, stay with the happy people.
Face the sun, life is a Christmas toy.
Down through the countless ages, tears have been contagious. And take it from me that misery is looking all around for company. So stay, stay, stay with the happy people. With the happy people. Don't wrinkle your brow.
It's strictly out of style.
Just stay, stay, stay with the people who
Love, love, love to wear a smile.
On record.
You got what?
I got that on record.
What do you got?
LP or an older record.
Autumn Leaves.
Autumn Leaves, Johnny Mercer.
Yeah. Who sang it?
Bing Crosby.
Yeah.
A lovely French melody called Feu et Mort, now equipped with English lyrics by that eminent lyricist out of Savannah, Georgia, Mr. John Mercer.
The falling leaves drift by my window, the autumn leaves of red and gold. I see your lips, the summer kisses, the sunburned hands I used to hold. Since you went away, the days grow long, and soon I'll hear old winter's song. But I miss
say to the world outside, I'll send this to Liz, this video. So, your beard's grown back?
Yeah.
Yeah? So, how was lunch?
Lunch was pretty good.
Yeah, what'd you have?
I had breakfast.
Oh, you got up for breakfast?
I don't have to get up till 12 o'clock.
Yeah, you miss half the day.
That's all right, I don't mind.
What time are you going to bed?
9:30.
Oh.
Well, I'm going to my room at 9:30.
Yeah. And?
I stop watching TV at 9:30.
Yeah? What time do you go to sleep?
12 o'clock.
Yeah? What do you do between 9 and 12?
Watch videos.
Oh, okay.
Or read my Bible.
Yeah?
I finished that book on Merchant of Dreams.
Yeah?
The one about MGM, the MGM story.
Yeah? That's good.
I finished reading it.
But I'll be seeing you. I'll see you in that small cafe, the park across the way, the children's carousel, the chestnut trees, the wishing well. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's light and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is blue, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you. I'll be seeing you. I'll be seeing you.
Well, thank you for all those amazing stories, for the music. We managed it all without a VHS or an 8-track. I wanted to take just a little bit of time with some of the younger folks that are here, but you folks are welcome to listen as well. We'll get our camera back up here in a minute. There we go. It's a curious day today, right? We talk about it being a day of Thanksgiving and a day of celebration, but people are crying, and then they laugh, and then they cry again, and they sigh, and they just sit really quietly. Sometimes life is like that. That's one of the beautiful things about being a human being, is that we can feel all kinds of different emotions, right? Like this last year when you were trying to decide, do I get to go to school? Do I have to stay home to go to school? Am I excited about that? Is I nervous? All those emotions. And sometimes when someone we love dies, like your great uncle David has died, that grief comes out in odd ways. Sometimes people even get grumpy. Or they might snap at you, or they just don't seem to have as much patience, even though your Grandpa Don says he's way better at getting around and playing on the floor than his dad was. And sometimes all you need to remember when that kind of stuff happens is it's not your fault, okay? That's just a way that the grief comes out sometimes. And the one thing you can do is find a box of these, because there's almost always one somewhere around. You just find a box of that, and if you're still young enough, and I'm pretty sure your Grandpa Don might even still be young enough to do this, is to climb up on the person's lap, give them a great big hug, and say, I love you. That's one of the easiest things to do when those tears are coming, but tears aren't a bad thing, really, right? Tears are just part of how we show somebody that we love them, or that we miss them. But I brought something else see what I have here. How did I manage to get myself off screen already? There we go. I brought one of these. Have you seen one of those before? You know, what should we do with that? Flow it up. The big kids are always in on this one too. Good? Sure? That's enough? Oh, bigger. Sorry, I thought you said sure, but you're saying bigger. Okay, gotcha. More? More. That's good. Thank you. So we could tie this off and we could have a great game of balloon volleyball, right? Because there's enough people, we could keep it going here for quite a while. We could do that kind of... Did you know that balloons talked? Yeah, well, that's the kind of disgusting noise, fun noise that balloons make. Or we could let it go. Do you know what happens when we let it go? Yeah, should we let it go? Are you ready? I just put a little bit more air back in it. All right, you ready? Yes. You're going to count it in. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Whoa. All the way over, almost to Carrie. So look at that balloon now. It looks a lot different, right, than it did before when it was full of air. Yeah. So is that air gone now? Yeah. Well, when Jesus was a young boy, perhaps about your age maybe even younger, maybe as young as you, he would have heard of something called the Ruach, the breath of God, or the Nefesh, which is the living soul in a person. And he would have learned that that breath comes from God, and when someone dies, as David has died, that breath goes back to be with God. And so just like that balloon was full of life and energy when the air and the breath was there, when it's gone, it still looks like a balloon. You can tell it's a balloon, but it's not quite the same. Yeah. But that air out of the balloon actually isn't gone, right? It's still around us. And so all those stories that your mom told, or your grandma and grandpa, or your great aunt, or your other aunts and uncles tell about David, those are stories that help keep him very present in our hearts. And maybe even some of you will grow up to be really good Trivial Pursuit partners. Or you'll learn all those little details about movies and producers and actors and actresses and be able to rattle that stuff off when you hear a tune. And at the very least, whenever you hear Bing croon, you'll be thinking about David. And maybe even sometimes when you put your hand on the window with your own children, you remember. And we know that we aren't alone. And we know that we're part of a much bigger story. And that story goes back for generations. And as Christian people, we talk about a story where death is very much a part of that story, but it's only a small part. The life is what gives meaning. And the love that we have for one another and the love that our God has for us is bigger even than all the hurts or the sadness we feel when someone dies. And so it might not quite feel like hell right now, but we keep going. And we are able to keep going because of that love. The love the Creator has for us, the love we have for each other, the stories we tell, the music we share, the life that we live, even when it doesn't always seem fair, to play well the hand that's given us and to make the most of it, as David did. And for that, we give thanks today, right? So, if you can hang out for a little bit longer, I have more of these later. All right? You think you can keep your adults quiet and still for a little bit more? Maybe? Okay. I think we're going to do a prayer, and then we have a reading of the 23rd Psalm that we'll share together, and then we'll be getting ready to offer the blessings to head out to the cemetery. So recognize. Just go to the PowerPoint. Recognizing that we are a very diverse group of traditions and experiences with prayer, I'll invite us to be as comfortable as we can in this time, to use the opportunity to give thanks for David's life, to remember your own stories, or to simply reflect upon your own life and how it is you might add to the goodness in the world, just as David did. Let us pray. God of life and love, we lay our hearts before you this day in thanksgiving and in sorrow. We give thanks for the most precious gift of life itself and the blessing of your love, which gives meaning and purpose to our lives. We give thanks for goodness and greatness of creation, for that green and growing season, the times of rest and renewal, the abundance of garden and field. And we thank you for sharing it all so generously with us. We also give thanks this day for David. We remember his quiet but persistent presence, his enjoyment of music and movie, his generosity as a volunteer with community and friends, but especially his deep love of family. And we give thanks for this caring and faithful man. Gracious and compassionate God, pour out your peace upon David's family. Draw close to Dawn and Noreen, Liz and Julian and their families. In the days of change and adjustment ahead, help them to find new and joyous moments, to share the stories, the laughter, and the tears, and to find therein comfort and strength. And refresh them by your Spirit, that they might grow strong and in turn be a blessing in this world. God of all wisdom, there is so much we do not understand about life and death, about forgiveness and new life. Grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. May we go from this time of community strengthened as your people. In Christ's name, amen. I will invite you to join together with me in the words of the 23rd Psalm. It was specifically asked for the King James Version, so you can dust off your these and thys and thous, and the words will be on screen. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God maketh me to lie down in green pastures. God leadeth me beside the still waters. God restoreth my soul. God leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. As we draw to a close, I'll get you to put it on the pulpit camera. Those of you that are going to the cemetery, a reminder, the directions are just ahead, out the doors to the parking lot. Either way, get on this street that runs here, 51st Ave, head down to the end of it, turn north, and you'll be in the cemetery. In a good way, we hope. Before the dawn of time, Creator God brooded upon this great emptiness, and out of darkness, God spoke light. Out of nothing, God sang all creation into being, and breathed into lifeless dust and fashioned humanity in God's own image. And in love, Creator, you call us into relationship with one another and with you, that our lives might have meaning and purpose. Each life, every wonder of creation, carries within it that divine spark of creativity. And then in Jesus, the one we call light of the world, you choose to become one of us, that our lives might have meaning and purpose. And so when we change the light, we are reminded that in life and in death, in life beyond death, you are with us. The light is not limited to this time and place, but it spreads out. And even when we can't see it anymore, it's still there. Trusting in that promise of eternal light and life through Christ, we commend to God David, to God's most tender and merciful care, and we commit his ashes to burial in this good earth. Receive him, we pray, a child of your good creation, into the arms of your mercy, into the blessed rest of everlasting peace, and into the glorious company of saints. Amen. May you be cradled in the loving arms of our Creator. May the Spirit of life bear you up on wings like eagles. May the peace which passes all understanding be yours this day and always. Amen. We have another piece of music to enjoy.
Got to accentuate the positive feeling, minus the negative, latch on to the affirmative, don't mess with Mr. In Between. You got to spread joy up to the maximum, bring gloom down to the minimum, have faith or pandemonium, liable to walk upon the scene.
To illustrate his last remark, Jonah in the whale, Noah in the ark. What did they do just when everything looked so dark?
Man, they said we better accentuate the positive, elim, minus the negative, latch on to the affirmative, don't mess with Mr. In Between. No, do not mess with Mr. In Between. Do you hear me?
Oh, listen to me, chillin', Anna. You will hear about the eliminating of the negative and an accent on a positive.
Gather round me, children, if you're willing, and sit tight while I start reviewing the attitude of doing right.
You gotta accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative, don't mess with Mr. In Between.
You got to spread joy
Up to the maximum,
bring gloom
down
to the minimum.
Then
Otherwise, pandemonium, liable to walk upon the scene.
to illustrate,
Well, illustrate.
my last remark,
You got the floor.
Jonah
in the whale, Noah
in the ark. What did they say?
What did they say?
Say when everything looks so dark. Man, they said we better accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative, don't mess with Mr. In Between. No, don't mess with Mr. In Between.
weeks ago, Miss Peggy Lee wrote a song, introduced it on the Philco show. It became quite a big hit.